Let's talk about how ancient humans turned rivers into doers, and that wild loop of separating, then reuniting with nature. Ever wondered how the first humans made sense of rivers, mountains, or even the moon? Not as stuff, but as something more like us. Max Muller's take on language and primitive thinking is basically this. Ancient people didn't just look at nature, they folded it into their own way of being, one action at a time. And language? It was the tool that made that happen. What I find fascinating is two things. First, how this old intuition lines up with later ideas like animism, panpsychism, and process philosophy. Second, that weird recursive loop I can't shake. The one, the more, the new one. We started as part of nature and animals, then split ourselves off, and now we're craving to reunite, but in a smarter, more nuanced way. Plus, let's be real. Müller spends so much time talking about that ancient, intuitive connection. I half wonder if he secretly leaned panpsychist. Let's dive in. First, let's paint the one part. Early humans didn't see a line between us and them being rivers, deer, wind. They were all the one. A mess of shared action. Picture a group huddled by a river. They didn't think, oh, there's water and here's us. They thought, that thing that flows, it's like how we run to hunt. That deer that grazes, it's like how we gather berries. For them, nature wasn't a separate other. It was family doing the same stuff they did. That's the seed of animism. Everything's alive with agency because everything's part of the same doing club. And that's where Muller's language idea clicks. Words weren't labels for things, but for actions we all share. The river wasn't water, it was the runner or the nourisher. Verbs that blurred the line between human and nature. Then came the split. As societies got bigger, we started categorizing humans, smart tool-making, in charge versus nature, animals, wild to be tamed or used. We named rivers just rivers instead of the nourisher, saw deer as prey instead of fellow gatherers. Language shifted too. Words became more about objects than shared actions. We built cities, fenced land, and told ourselves we were above nature. That split felt like progress at the time. It let us farm, build, survive better, but it also made us forget that old gut feeling. We're not separate. Now we're in the new one phase, craving to reunite, but not by going back to being hunter-gatherers. We want that connection again, but with a nuance of science and philosophy. Think about how we talk about climate change now. We don't just say the planet is warming. We say we're hurting the ecosystems we depend on. We're remembering that we're part of the web again, but this time we understand why thanks to ecology and how thanks to process philosophy, which says reality is all overlapping processes, not separate things. It's not just the river is alive. It's the river's flow sustains our groundwater, which sustains our crops, which sustains us. It's a smarter union, built on both that ancient intuition and modern knowledge. And here's where Müller comes back in. I can't help but side-eye him a little. He writes so passionately about how ancient humans assimilated nature into their own acts, how language was built to link human and non-human action. He doesn't come out and say, I'm a panpsychist, but come on. Panpsychism is the idea that consciousness, or a spark of it, is in everything, not just us. Muller's whole thing is that early humans treated nature like it had intentions, like it did things on purpose, which is basically the everyday version of panpsychism. He spends pages arguing that this wasn't primitive nonsense, but a valid way of making sense of the world. It feels like he's quietly defending that old panpsychist adjacent vibe, like he's saying, hey, they weren't wrong to see themselves in nature. We were wrong to forget that. Let's loop in the other big ideas to tie it all together. That ancient intuition feeds into panpsychism. We're all made of the same aware stuff. Anthropomorphism, we still project human traits onto nature because it helps us connect. And process philosophy, we're all part of the same becoming, not static things. Even pictorial languages back this up. Take old Chinese oracle bone inscriptions. Half the symbols about human bodies are verbs like shoot or hold, not nouns. The picture wasn't just a hand. It was the action of using that hand, which is exactly process philosophy's whole deal. It's not about the what, but the what it does. And that's the loop. We started with action-based, connected thinking, split into object-based, separate thinking, and now we're circling back to action-based thinking. But deeper. Muller's genius, I think, is that he didn't just study old language. He studied the heart behind it. He saw that ancient humans didn't just talk differently. They felt differently about nature. And that's the part we're reclaiming now. We're not just learning to love the planet. We're learning to see ourselves in it again, just like our ancestors did. The loop isn't a circle. It's a spiral. We're coming back to the same idea, but but higher up, with more understanding. And honestly, Müller would probably nod along. He seems like the kind of guy who'd say, "Told you that old connection mattered."